Hello and welcome. Frances here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button and a bell below if you would like to be notified as to when I upload more content, and also by subscribing you help support this channel. I'm coming to you from Kaurna country, and as such I acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land, and in doing so I acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. So I don't normally talk about Halloween, Samhain at this time of the year because in the Southern Hemisphere it is the Beltane, it's the gateway to summer. However, the world seems to be fixated with Halloween, and it's so, yeah. And I guess if you sort of pull back the layers of the trashy plastic commercialism to expose the ancient Celtic pagan roots of Samhain, you sort of understand where I'm coming from, because the accounts really originally only had two sort of seasons. They did the dark half and the light half of the year. And if you sort of understood that, you would understand that here in the Southern Hemisphere, we'll come into the light half. Hello, people, coming up to the summer solstice. But there's also the thought within modern paganism that both Samhain and Beltane are times of the year where the veils between the worlds, that of the living and of the dead, are at its thinnest. So I guess there is sort of like a similarity between these two festivals. However, this sort of like rendering of the veil is starting to be debated in some circles as to how historically actual it was, or is it just another story being made up by modern paganism? But I guess that is a story for another time. So while I guess it is out of place here in the Southern Hemisphere, but despite all that, Halloween is increasing in popularity. So I just thought I'd just do a quick video, so I'll probably be waffling on for a while now, about the cycle of death, which is Northern Hemisphere, and rebirth, Southern Hemisphere. Because both of them tend to be lumped together, almost like the same sides of the coin. And it's quite interesting because they both form part of a very important cycle that is seen in nature constantly, which also can be mirrored within our own selves. I mean, we're always going through a process of shedding, releasing, rebirthing ourselves as we continue on, regardless of what spiritual journey or life path that we're on. And nothing and no one is actually immune to this death, rebirth, death process. What is interesting when we sort of look at Halloween or Samhain in particular is that the ancient Celts celebrated their seasonal rites allegedly from the dusk of the day before and continued through the night to the dawn the next day. So they had this period that was overnight for their rites. And in some circles, it was believed that by the morning of the 1st of November, that this was a time when the spiritual activity was almost like peaking at its height. And it's also interesting to note that around this time of the year, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, also reached their height in the sky. And this constellation is further connected with the cycles of death and rebirth, thus coinciding with the cycles and the rhythms of Mother Nature as well, in particular to the Northern Hemisphere. Now, we know that energy itself cannot be destroyed. And what it does is actually shift from one form to another. So Samhain, which was the predecessor to Halloween, it we're all sort of like running around in that plastic, is believed to mark this transition, this transformation of the dead from one form to another. And possibly this is a way of understanding this interconnectedness, where death is not the final mark in our life, with death being a natural process of life. And as such, it wasn't fair, because it seems to be feared in our modern world. What appears to have been feared, however, was, I'm going to use a Buddhist term here because it's not chaotic, the restless ghosts, the restless souls that have lingered. And it was the protection against these, especially when traveling at night, that turnips were carved out, almost like a deterrent. And these turnips were, especially in Scotland, were actually the forerunner for the orange jack-o'-lantern pumpkins that we're probably more familiar with today, and which in the last number of years I've started seeing in our shopping centres here, supermarkets here in Australia. And they're very out of place. They look very sad. I don't know who's growing them, but pumpkins are an autumn, winter vegetable. But our modern world is like we are utilizing this time, regardless of hemispheres, to tap into this collective energy of the season. And we can do that as a way of almost being a reminder of our part in the great wheel of life, death, birth, rebirth. Reminding us that we are, in fact, physical beings, energy in this physical self. And as spiritual beings, energy, we never die. Instead, as I said, energy can't be destroyed. We live on in different forms, in different ways, continuing to recreate ourselves throughout these cycles of life. So I guess how I've been thinking about this week, surrounded by all the plastic, is maybe even in the Southern Hemisphere, we can actually acknowledge the many deaths and endings that we have experienced throughout the year, even at Beltane. So whether these deaths are of ideas, attitude, relationships, dreams, or even actual deaths of loved ones, of pets, of people who may have impacted our lives in one way or another. And utilize that energy at this time as the Northern Hemisphere is honouring Samhain or Halloween, so tapping into that egregore, that consciousness, to also honour this transition from one form to the next, and then plant the seeds to continue through into the light half of the year. And of course, maybe do some small Samhain activities like holding a dumb supper, where a place set at the table for the deceased, for the hungry ghosts, and the dinner is eaten in silence, silent reflection. That can also be turned around for the Southern Hemisphere, where we reflect and contemplate, and drawing the energy in to what we want to manifest during the brighter half of the year. Alternatively, lighting a simple candle, reciting a prayer, a blessing, favorite poem, even saying thank you. Keeping in mind that even if our relationships with probably more recent ancestors may have been problematic, and not the people that we would still care to honour, our ancestral lines stretch back millennia after millennia. And all these people, even up to the problematic ones, have shaped us, even on the minutest level, into the people that, or the person we are today. So I guess, especially these days where ancestor reverence or ancestor honouring is very popular in a number of circles, especially when other forms of neo-paganism, I don't really see why, even though it's still Beltane and it's time of celebration. We can thank our ancestors as we celebrate the beginning of summer because if it wasn't for them, we would not be here. So regardless of what side of the equator you're in, blessed Samhain, blessed Beltane. And if you are out doing your Halloween thing, I hope you survive the sugar overload.